Hi everyone, this is Dr. Scott Haggerty here with this month's Power Up. Today we're going to be talking all about asthma. If you have a child that's been affected by asthma, this one is going to be very informative for you. We are going to talk about a lot of information that we can go super deep into with the science. We're going to try and keep it relatively high level because I want you to get the gist of the most important concepts as it relates to chiropractic and asthma. So let's talk first and foremost about causes. Why do so many kids today have asthma? That's a simple yet complex question. And so let's dig a little bit more into what some of the basic science that you need to know is when it. So there's a lot of commonalities in family histories that we find when we're going through and interviewing parents and learning more and more about the child. And so a lot of the things that we see is there's oftentimes a family history of some type of autoimmune diseases, whether it's RA or other types of autoimmune conditions that are common within the family. Oftentimes it was a very stressful pregnancy. There is usually a history of some type of a birth trauma, ranging from things like having a C-section to having a prolonged forceful delivery where baby was stuck due to poor positioning in utero for longer than what obviously should have been expected. Oftentimes with a lot of force going into the baby's neck and upper back, causing a lot of fixation into the upper mid back, which we call the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine, which is the neck. A lot of history of toxic exposure or significant immune challenges while mom was pregnant or baby was in utero. And then early exposure to cow's milk, soy, dairy, grains, and toxic foods, because all of these lead to what we call immune sensitization. Frequent Tylenol use, because Tylenol is known to interfere with and suppress immune function. History of antibiotics, because antibiotic use by its nature has the effect of interfering with normal immune function, predisposing children to higher incidences of asthma, especially if introduced early in life. And oftentimes they're fully vaccinated. And one of the reasons that that is significant is because it triggers a cascade of immune events that fires off oftentimes a pretty significant immune response through the Th2 system, leading to higher incidences of what they call atopic or allergic asthma. So this is a lot of the common things that we see when it comes to typical asthma, right? So respiratory infections, allergens, chemical exposure through work if you're an adult, irritants like temperature changes, exercise can cause it, cold air, emotional stress, strong odors, things like medications, tobacco, refluxing issues, pollutants in the environment, and food additives are all things that are known to cause flare-ups with asthma. But what's really going on? What is the underlying cause that we need to know about? So the first thing that you need to understand is the concept called a subluxation. So subluxation has a few important concepts you need to understand. The first component is what is called misalignment. So when a vertebra is not in its normal position, it causes a sequence of events which leads to the brain trying to protect the area through what is called fixation. When there is a misalignment in fixation, this leads to interference with nerve function. Nerves, the way that they work is information goes down from the brain through the spinal cord out to the nerves, communicating with the organs, glands, and cells of the body. But it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. The information coming from the body about the health of the organ cells and tissues has to make its way back up through the spinal column into the spinal cord to tell the brain about how it needs to act in coordination with all of the input about what it needs to do to keep the body healthy. If there is any type of interference to this process, then the body cannot achieve optimal health. That is what the biggest issue with subluxation is it creates a cascade of events that leads to significant problems down the road. So garbage in equals garbage out. So let's talk about this concept. So if you go from left down and up to the right, so dyskinesia is the technical term for what a subluxation causes. That loss of motion, loss of the ability to go through normal range of motion of one or more vertebrae leads to this problem called disafferentation. If you think of it this way, if you were to treat the spine like a breaker box in your house, Imagine that when a vertebra stops moving, it's like blowing a breaker. You have a significant loss of input through that level, so it creates, number one, brain noise. The brain perceives that as stress, so it causes a stress response in the brain, firing up the sympathetic division of the nervous system, which will cause noise in the brain so you cannot get the information clearly, but it also causes direct input problems because the information coming in is now not getting to the brain as efficiently as possible. When there's that loss of motion, it fires off this response called dysautonomia. And so it creates an imbalance between your rest and digest, called your parasympathetic nervous system, and your fight or flight division of the nervous system, called the sympathetic. For simplicity, we'll call the parasympathetic the brake pedal and the sympathetic the gas pedal. When there is one or more subluxations in the spine, it starts to change the balance. Instead of the brain keeping on brake pedal, what it does is it starts to increase the amount that the body uses the gas pedal. And the more that you're on the gas pedal, and the longer that your brain is on the gas pedal, it creates a major issue because nerves that fire together wire together. And so what that means is that your brain learns these problems. It creates this process where there is a memory now to this problem with autonomic imbalance. So your fight or flight nervous system, the gas pedal, stays kicked on even when it doesn't need to be. This leads to a multitude of health issues, but that presents as this thing called dyskinesis. And dyskinesis literally means that there are problems with energy management and communication that lead to output issues, which is poor health and consistently declining health the longer that these issues are in place. Well, let's consider how asthma really works, right? This is a malfunction with the respiratory system. The brain is having abnormal responses in neurological and immune control relating to stimulus coming in from the environment. And so in turn, the output, the dyspneic component, is then you have constriction of the bronchioles, leading to asthmatic attacks. So when you look at the biomechanical fixation component to this, so when there are problems with the upper part of the neck, where the upper cervical spine, this causes significant problems with an area where the vagus nerve lives. And so we'll dig more into that later, but this vagus nerve is a big issue because it is the parasympathetic control system, and if it's not working the way that it should, it's going to cause major issues. The second is the mid-back, called the thoracic spine. When this area is fixated and subluxated, it locks the mid-back and the ribs, preventing proper expansion of the lungs when breathing. So let's take a look at this video.
Mechanics of breathing. Consciously take a breath and think about the fact that there are 10 different muscle groups working together to make this happen. These muscle groups include the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. The main muscle used for breathing is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped structure consisting of several large muscles, which is sandwiched between the chest cavity, containing the lungs and the rib cage, and the abdomen, containing the digestive system, including your stomach. The muscles that move the rib cage itself are the internal and external intercostal muscles. They are each attached to the ribs and run between them. To inhale air, the diaphragm contracts and moves down, while the external intercostal muscles contract, forcing the rib cage up and out. The combined effect of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles increases the volume of the chest cavity and expands the lungs. This expansion of the lungs increases their volume, reducing the pressure within them, causing air to be drawn in. This action is similar to a piston sucking petrol into a car engine. In normal breathing, we use around 25% of our lung capacity, which is called our tidal volume. As you inhale deeply, the diaphragm moves further down into the abdomen, pushing your belly out, giving more room for the lungs to expand and draw in more air. This type of breathing is called belly breathing or abdominal breathing, and is critical to prepare you for your free dive. Belly breathing allows you to completely fill your lungs with air. The maximum amount of air your lungs can hold is called your total lung capacity. With training, you can use more of your lung capacity.
So what that video explains is very important. To be able to go and really move and get proper respiration, you have to be able to go and draw the diaphragm down, but it requires proper rib motion. If the mid-back is not moving the way that it's supposed to, the ribs do not move. This becomes a bigger and bigger issue the longer that a person has asthma, because it locks down the mid-back so significantly that they're not getting that expansion, that motion necessary for the ribs to go up and down, allowing for normal expansion and contraction of the ribs. So this is a pretty significant issue, and it becomes a bigger and bigger issue the longer the pattern exists, because the brain begins to learn that there is an issue, and then it starts to create more and more responses, firing up stress responses because of this type of an issue. So neuroimmune suppression is another major problem that we deal with. So sensory portions of the vagus nerve feed into the respiratory centers of the brain. And so this process of this dyskinesia leading to disafferentation, leading to dysautonomia, creates this dysregulation of normal breathing due to improper neuroimmune control. So the common types that we see, especially with kids, are what are called atopic or allergic asthma. In adults, we call it neurogenic. It's nerve inflammation, and this is the most common type that we see in adults. For those of you who are experiencing these types of issues, you got to understand that the big problem is it's a major issue with input. The vagus nerve controls not just respiration, but it also controls normal immune function. So when the vagus nerve is not getting proper input going upwards into the brain, into an area called the medulla, it does not get proper feedback about respiration. So because the job of the vagus nerve, it's both output and input. It's the output control into the lungs that tell them when to relax to take breaths. There's another nerve called the phrenic nerve that comes from the upper part of the mid-back as well, that causes the diaphragm to move downwards. And if you have problems with both of those nerves because of disafferentation, along with mechanical problems, with the ribs not being able to move because of fixation of the mid-back, and an imbalanced or improperly functioning immune system because of issues with autonomic control and other issues that present with asthma, then you're going to have a significantly worsening problem that's going to lead to greater and greater need for usage of things like inhalers and inhaled corticosteroids. So this is just a map here so you have an understanding of the way that the output-input cycle works. You see on the highlighted area, that follows the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the single most important nerve in the entire body, and you can see one of the major areas that it follows down to, followed by the black arrows, is that it goes up into the neck, where it conveys information to the respiratory centers in the medulla, but it also has output control, which brings information down into the lungs, telling that it's time to breathe. So loss of this normal input and output creates major issues. So for those of you who don't understand where we fit into the equation on this, let me explain to you. What an adjustment does is it helps to go and improve this disafferentation. Because by putting motion into the spine through the adjustment, it decreases the amount of disafferentation over time, improving normal brain and immune function. And so what happens is, and we have other videos where you can see patients who've given testimonials to this, is that the more that the brain is being stimulated through that vagus nerve and the parasympathetic system, the better and better immune system works, and the better the respiratory system works, because that feedback into the brain tells the brain that it can relax, decrease the gas pedal or stress response, allowing the immune system to normalize, and in turn, the symptoms of asthma in the vast majority of patients that we treat get tremendously better over time. I hope that this was helpful. If you or someone that you love is suffering with asthma, make sure you make an appointment to go and see a pediatric chiropractor or a local chiropractor in your area to see if you are a candidate for chiropractic care to go and help you with treatment of your asthma. All right, this is Dr. Scott. Have a great day and God bless.